I want my daughter to see that women who look like her can do things that the world looks at as being really important, like being a lawyer. Or I can show her that women who look like her and just women in general can do whatever they want and set the world on fire.
Hey there, I'm Goli Kalkaran, and this is Lessons from a Quitter, where we believe that it's never too late to start over. No matter how much time or money you've spent getting to where you are, if ultimately you are not happy, then it's time to get out. If you're feeling stuck and you feel like there's gotta be more, there's gotta be a way to feel fulfilled and excited about what you do, then this is the podcast for you. Each week, I will sit down with an inspiring guest who quit their professional career in order to forge their own path and create a life that they love. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I can't believe it is December already. We are closing out this year and this decade. Going to start 2020 soon. I hope you guys are having a wonderful holiday season and gearing up for the new year and maybe thinking about what you want that year to look like. One thing I wanted to mention, we talk a lot about coaching and mastermind groups on this podcast, just in the way of like the people that tend to come on the show, either worked with life coaches or business coaches or joined groups that kind of propelled their success after they left these traditional paths. And I wanted to touch on it. I just saw this TED Talk that was so brilliant, and it was by a surgeon. And he talked about how he decided to get a coach for surgery and how unheard of that is, obviously, in medicine, and how we're sort of trained to believe or have to accept that we know how to do everything. And it's sort of maybe like a sign of weakness, or I don't know, like it's looked down upon to try to seek help. But he was realizing that there is, surgeons make mistakes, and there are these statistics of the averages of mistakes they make. And he decided to hire a retired surgeon or someone that was retiring to come into his surgeries and just watch him and help him be better. And he was just blown away by the results, because it was just things, little tweaks that he wasn't noticing, like just moving his arm a little bit this way or that way, and how that helped him perform. And he started seeing that he was making less mistakes and that he was getting better in his practice. And, the talk is mostly about like how we can all benefit from this. And I think it's something that, I don't know, we rationally understand. Like, we know that professional athletes and actors and like even people at the top of their game are constantly getting coached. And yet there is still some kind of doubt or stigma or whatever it is that stops us from utilizing that. And I just wanted to raise it because like it has helped me tremendously, especially going from a career to something that was really unknown to me. I know a lot of times like people talk about getting mentors, and that's great, but oftentimes you have to buy your mentors, and that's okay too. That gets you in the rooms with people that you want to be with. And so I would encourage you, if you know you want to do something, like find someone that is a couple steps ahead of you and pay for help. And I know like maybe you can't afford it and you got to figure out, what you can afford. And I think sometimes maybe you can sacrifice other things in order to get that, because it propels you into another sphere very quickly. And I actually heard somebody talk about this concept. I don't remember where, but it is just applies to really everything. And he was saying that basically like you can have between time, money, and quality, you can have 2, but you can't have 3 ever. So let's go through those. Like if you want to save time and save money, which means so you want to do it cheap and you want to do it fast, you're going to hit like the quality is not going to be that good, right? If you want to have great quality, but you want to do it fast, you want to save time, then you're going to have to pay money. And if you want to have good quality and you want to save money, then it's going to take a long time. And none of those, there's no like right or wrong. Any combination of those is fine as long as you know, right? So if you're starting a business and you want it to be good quality, you want to put out a good product, and you don't want to spend money, then it's going to take you a long time. And that's fine, but just know that. So don't get frustrated when it's not up and running and doing well in a year. Like, give yourself a realistic time frame. And the reason I say that is I just think if you want to go faster and you want to have good quality, then often that is spending the money and getting someone to help you get there. And I know, when I now see people that are where I want to be or doing things I want to do, I start noticing this trend that they all have coaches and they have mastermind groups where they surround themselves with other people that are doing it and they have to pay for it. It's hard to quantify how much it helps you because like not only with mindset stuff and like making you, having people to bounce ideas off of, but just speeding up the learning curve so you don't have to spend 3 years learning something. Like someone will tell you what you're doing wrong, and within 6 months you can be up and running. So I encourage you to just think of it in maybe a different way. I know that sometimes it's hard to wrap our minds around paying someone for something that we haven't typically paid for, but I think that it's an emerging field and it for a good reason. Like people are seeing a lot of return on that investment. And I know for me, it's fundamentally changed my business, my life, how I approach things. And it's funny with people that once they get into coaching, you see like in the beginning, you're so hesitant to spend money. And then after a while, you're like, oh my God, I want all the coach. I will pay whatever I have to because you really realize the value of it. So I think it's a good segue into the episode today because Shunta Grant is a exceptional educator, coach, whatever you want to call it. And she helps women build businesses and lives on the other side of busy through teaching her signature 4-step peace, pace, progress framework. That framework teaches women how to create consistency, focus, and structure in their businesses so that they can execute specific goals that progress their business. Now, she didn't start out obviously as a business coach. I don't think anybody ever does. You actually have to kind of go through business yourself. Shunta was a lawyer, like there are tons of our guests, and she went that traditional route. She did very well. She climbed that ladder. And while she was working as an attorney, she started creating hair bows for her daughter Zoe and selling those on Instagram. And we'll talk about how that kind of took off. And she created a company called Because of Zoe Designs. And that enabled her to really leave the law and question like what she wanted to do. She ended up building that business. And because she learned so much through that process and how to really structure her life and her business so that they work together so that she can be a mom and a wife and a business owner, she started the Business Life and Joy podcast, and she now has this coaching business called the Peace, Pace, Progress framework. And she's killing it, both with her Because of Zoe Designs and with this coaching program. Her own story is so inspiring and her insights are so helpful. But I also, I know we talk a lot to people that do this kind of stuff, and I wanted to highlight how important these resources are and tools. And so I really encourage you all, I'm not trying to endorse one person. You can find who works for you, who you gel with, but it is very helpful. So I hope that helps. I'm so excited to jump in with Shunta because I know you're going to learn a lot. So without further ado, let's talk to Shunta. Hi, Shunta. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much.
Oh my God, I am so excited to have you and to jump into all the amazing things that you have done and are doing. On this podcast, we typically start back at the original career. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about what led you to be a lawyer and what your career as a lawyer looked like?
When I was young in high school, I made a mistake. Literally, I thought I was going into a meeting. I don't think I've ever told this story, actually. I thought I was going into the student government, informational meeting. And so I went in the room before school, sat down, and 15 minutes in, I realized this isn't for student council. It was for something called mock trial. And that was clearly fate because I stayed in that meeting and I learned about this thing where people pretend to be lawyers and they get a fake case and they present the case. And I decided, well, I'm here. This sounds interesting. And this was my freshman year and I tried out for mock trial. I took it and it just seemed really intriguing. Like you get these facts, these characters, and it was so fun. And I beat out seniors for a lead attorney role. And it was something that I didn't think I would have. It was a surprise to me because I considered myself a kind of more quiet person, but it was something about it that just was really exciting. As I was reading things, I was like, well, that doesn't make sense. They need to ask this question. And so I knew how to come up with questions. And that was like my first introduction to law, which was mock trial. When I applied to college 3 years later, I applied to college as pre-med. I thought, I want to be an obstetrician. I think that's just so cool to bring babies in the world. And I never at that age, I guess, put what you really like doing means that's what you probably should do in real life. I never put those two things together. I just thought you decide what you're going to be and then you be that. And then you may have these other things that you like. Literally applied to college pre-med and did mock trial, loved it. It really was transformative for me. It gave me so much confidence. It was something that I was really good at naturally and just really loved. And my mom saw that and she used to always say, you're going to be a lawyer. You keep saying you're going to do this, but okay, I support your dreams, but you're going to be a lawyer. Just watch. And I'm just like, no, 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 no. And then the summer before I started college, I was thinking and I was just like, I don't naturally like science. I don't want to ever deal with like blood. And if I see people cry, I'm going to cry. And maybe this actually isn't the best route for me. Maybe, so I switched my major to, and you haven't even stepped foot on campus yet, so it was fine. I changed my major to pre-law, political science, and did mock trial in college as well. And just kind of finished on, knew I was going to go to law school next. But it really happened by chance when I actually sat down and realized, like, this is something I really love to do. And maybe that is a good idea to do something you really love for your job. But it's so interesting how in my entire life, no one had ever sat me down to connect those two dots. Really, like, you're good at this. Maybe this is something you want to spend your time doing. And so, yeah, so I went to law school, left law school and clerked for a judge and went to a law firm, all the things. But that's what got me there.
That's so interesting. I mean, it's really always so fascinating to see the little, sparks that lead us or, guide our path. And so you clearly, I think a lot of people end up going to law school and don't really. I've heard so many people where I was done with college and I didn't know what to do. So I just decided law school. Like for you, clearly you had an interest in, even the skill set that, some lawyers use. So when you actually started practicing, did you find that it was similar to what you thought it was going to be? Or did you get to use those skills? Did you like practicing law?
So I did a 2-year clerkship and I didn't know what that was going to be like at all because I never had any type of experience with that. But during law school, every summer, I worked at a law firm. I worked at 3 different firms over my time. I enjoyed a good bit of the work, the research. For me, what I loved was being in the courtroom, but I knew in real life, number one, most cases settle. Number two, when they do go to court, the big dogs are going to be the ones standing up in court. But I at least liked being the person who did the work that helped the big dog go in the court and fight. So I get to sit at the table. Then as a clerk, I got to sit in the courtroom next to the judge. So I got to see a different perspective of it. So that was really exciting. And I really enjoyed clerking. And then when I went to the law firm, I was excited, one, because I had a job. I graduated in 2008. And at that time, friends of mine who did very well in law school, were losing their jobs. And so I was just happy to have landed a job after clerking. From that perspective, I was just like, be grateful, Shunta. I really started to think the work I was doing was not utilizing what I love to do in my skill set. It was doing a lot of, I don't know, just kind of work that I think anybody could almost do. And it wasn't exciting. But then I realized if I keep at this, I can look for those opportunities. And those opportunities started to come where I actually got to pick up some smaller cases where I got to be the lead attorney and go in by myself in court. And I can say I never lost a case, but I didn't have a ton. But I never lost a case. So I did have that opportunity. I had the opportunity to go in and actually train clients and help them, which I really loved when we actually got to go into a client's office and train their people. And I really liked that. So those days, those parts of the work were really fulfilling. But unfortunately, that was the minority of my time. And that was the minority of the work that was required. And I just felt she said so humbly, a lot of the work was beneath my skill set. Like I did exceptionally well in law school, graduated in the top 10% of my class, did the law review, like all the honors you want to get. I did those things. I expected to have a certain caliber of work. And the firms, I moved to Greenville, South Carolina after law school and got married. And I spent all my summers working in Atlanta because that's where my then boyfriend, now husband, was looking for work, but he ended up getting work in Greenville. So I worked at these very, very high quality, top notch law firms, like difficult to get into law firms. So I was thinking I was going to get in a firm and do this high quality work with these really amazingly smart people. Not that the people I didn't work with were smart, but my reality here was just different, and the caliber and the quality of work was very different. You're unexcited about it. I stopped caring, and it just lost the love for it, because I really felt like I worked so hard to do way better work than this. Most days, again, I did have those few exciting times where I got to do some really cool things with some other lawyers from other offices, in our Charleston office and other offices. So that was cool. But that's when the love of that started to really wane. And I felt like I'm just doing something that anybody can do, and not something that requires more of my brain than I would like to use.
Yeah, I think that's a common experience for a lot of people in a lot of different careers, not just law, but I think you go in with an aspect of one part that you love, or, certain things that you love. And the reality of it is that the day to day is nothing like that, or there's, that comes up it's few and far between, and it's fine in the beginning and you're looking for those little pockets. But a lot of times when you realize, wait, my day to day doesn't really entail any of the things I like doing, and like once in a blue moon I get to do that, it's kind of hard to sustain. So how do you start making this transition from lawyer to entrepreneur? I know you started the company because of Zoe. So why don't you let us know, like, how did that come about, and how did you start dipping your toes into entrepreneurship?
Very randomly. I had a daughter, so we had our first child, and I think 2013. I get the dates wrong almost every time, but I'm pretty sure that's right. And then in 2014, she was about to turn 1, and I was looking at her hair bow collection, which was very large, and I realized, like, these things all look alike, and I want something different. Wear something with these colors or cotton candy on it or something different. And they came from different places on Etsy, and they all look the same. I said, I'm going to just go to YouTube and figure out, like, if I can find fabric I like, I want to learn how to turn them into a hair bow. And so I just did that and realized, okay, I have a lot more than I need to make one little bow. And I remember telling my friend, I think I'm going to make these hair bows, and I sell them on Instagram. And it was so random because everyone feels me. They're like, this is Shunta, the logical lawyer who's probably one day going to become a judge and like take over the world. Like, that's just like my personality. And you're telling me you're going to make hair bows? What? And that's what I did. I just started making them and putting them, pictures of them, up on Instagram. People will leave their email address, and I would send an invoice and ship them out. And I would just post all of that on Instagram. When it really started to feel real was when the next year stores would email us and say, hey, can you send us your line sheet? We're interested in putting your bows in our stores. And I didn't even know what a line sheet was. Like, I would go to Google, what is a line sheet, examples of line sheets. And that really was cool because I really loved doing it. I loved having time at our dining room table at night when it was quiet, making the bows. I loved going and picking the fabrics. And it just was so weird. It's almost like discovering a part of yourself you knew existed, and then like questioning everything. Like, what is life?
I love this. I have a couple of questions though before we even move on, because you say, like, people are looking at that, and I think, like, looking at you like, wait, what are you doing? But I'm just wondering, like, even for yourself, like, so often we have maybe an idea and you're like, oh, I'm going to sell these. But then that part of our brain jumps in, is like, what are you talking about? You're a lawyer, like, you can't, like, what is everyone going to say? What are your, colleagues at your law firm are going to be like, wait, what, you sell hair bows? And so we stop ourselves before we start because we think it sounds ridiculous, or it's beneath us, or whatever ridiculous thoughts we have. So how did you push through that, like that doubt, and being like, why would I be, and I'm sure at the time, obviously you're not selling bows for that much. So you're not thinking this is going to be like a huge moneymaker. It's just like, I want to sell some bows on the side while I'm an attorney. And I feel like most people just like stop themselves at that thought.
I'm trying to go back into the initial headspace. I know over time where that thought process went, but when it first started, it really just felt like, this is fun. I'm going to do this. It really didn't make sense as far as time, because I would get home, be with Zoe, we'd have dinner, put her to bed, and then start working until sometimes 1, 2, 3 in the morning, take a nap, get up and go to work. Like, that didn't make sense. We didn't like need extra money. Like, we weren't like, oh, great, this is going to help us make ends meet. It was just something I really liked. And also those bows, now being on the other side, were so cheap early on. But, I just thought, this is fun. I really like it, and I'm just going to do it. And once I saw other people were really enjoying it and that I was enjoying it, it just became fun for me. And then I started connecting with people on Instagram, parents who were sending pictures and then tagging me. And I'm like, this girl is wearing in her family photos something that I made. That is so cool. I think the excitement of that overshadowed any concern, like what in the world are you doing? But in long term, when I really started thinking about doing this full time, I had the benefit of having a mom who taught me early on over and over, you can literally do anything you want to do. And I believed her. Most of my life, I have, and still to this day, I believe anything I say I want to do, I'm going to do it and it will be done. Once I made that decision later on that this is what I really want to do, I just believed in myself and believed that if I figured it out while I was working a full-time job, I'd definitely be able to figure it out once it was what I gave my time to.
I love that. I mean, I love so many parts of that. I think that we so often don't give ourselves just any time to do the things we like that just spark joy. You know, maybe you don't know, like you were saying, this is a hidden part of you. Like it's not like you had a passion growing up for sewing or bows or whatever. It's like you followed a curiosity and allowed yourself the time and space. And I think a couple of things that you said that most people just stop is, yeah, a lot of times, like as a lawyer, as a mom, clearly you're, have a lot on your plate and there isn't a ton of extra time. And so it's kind of like, well, why would I start this project? I don't have the time to do this. And I hear that a lot, like a lot of people that want to get out of their career. It's like, well, how do I start something? I'm so busy with this other thing. And I just love that you gave yourself that, even if it didn't make sense on paper, even if it didn't make, if it's like, hey, this is a little bit crazy because you're spreading yourself thin. It's like, this is bringing me joy and I'm going to make time for it. Hey, we'll jump back into the episode in 1 second. I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to be holding a free webinar on December 10th and 11th to go through the 5 steps that you need to take to go from being stuck in a career that you hate to well on your way to a new path that you love. It is the exact framework that we worked through in my group coaching program called Stuck to Strategy, and I want to share it with you. So if you're interested in starting off 2020 with a bang and you want to have a framework, join the webinar at quitterclub.com/webinar. All right, now back to the episode. Okay, so then once you get to the point where you realize that you can make this, so how did that come about? How long were you doing this on the side while you were a lawyer, and how did you come to the point of realizing like, hey, this could be a real business?
Our very first Instagram sale was April of 2014. I left the practice of law September 2015. I didn't realize till I started telling this story how short of a time period that was. That felt like 2 to 3 years. And then I looked at the dates and I was like, no, that was like a year and some change. The first store reached out to us January 2015 and the second store February 2015. And I think that's when things started like perking up like, okay, this could be something real. And even though the bows were so cheap, it was making pretty good money for just doing something I loved and the fabric wasn't that expensive. But what really, I think for me was the deciding factor was it was the summer of 2015, just a really bad experience with my boss and associate that we worked with where there was just a total disregard for me as a human. I ended up missing a coworker's wedding, which I still just hate because I was working because I was going to go to her wedding. And then the next day we were headed out of town to go see my niece graduate from college, who I hadn't seen in years or from high school. We were headed to Orlando, Florida for her graduation. And the only reason we left on Sunday and not Saturday was so that I could make the coworker's wedding. But I spent her entire wedding working because I got in the work early and reminded everybody, I'm going to be gone. But no one cared until Friday to respond to all the things I'd given them and I had to make changes. Missed her wedding on the way to Orlando with my family, taking calls under a blanket. The morning of her graduation, creeping out the room to get on a call, complete disregard for me as no boundary, all boundaries crossed. It wasn't like this was a last minute thing and you didn't know I was going to be gone. And I just had to really think to myself, like, this is how I'm going to be treated forever and ever here. And so at first I thought, I'm going to find another job. And I actually started looking for other lawyer jobs, but nothing excited me. Like I would go to these interviews. I knew if I went to another law firm, that's just trading cocaine for heroin or crack for whatever. It's still drugs and it's not you. So I wasn't looking at any other firms. I even applied for non-lawyer jobs at firms, but doing like their marketing or their summer associate program. Like I was willing to find something that I wanted to, just was excited about. And that's when I really realized you have something that you are excited about. And it was in the middle of doing all those different interviews for different places. I tried to go in house. I looked at places like just applying for all kinds of jobs when I realized the answer is already here. It just doesn't look like what I thought it was going to look like. And I remember the car ride from Orlando, which is a long ride from Orlando to Greenville, South Carolina. And I told my husband, I said, this is it. I can't do this anymore. By the end of the year, I am going to be gone. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I cannot stay in this environment. I would be physically sick on Sunday nights thinking about Monday. And that's not the life I wanted to live. I was too good for this. I'm better than this. Everyone is, to be clear. This isn't a me thing. To be doing something that gets you physically sick every Sunday night, that puts you in a bad mood every Sunday night. It's like you go from this beautiful Sunday together, and then somewhere around between 4 and 6, you realize what tomorrow is, and you are just sad. I didn't want to keep that up. I decided we had a big arbitration coming up, and I said after this, because I was a key person in that who did a lot of the work, I'm going to be gone. And that's essentially exactly what happened. I just kept focusing on Because of Zoe more and more. And I knew that I would be able to get to a place where it was going to be the better decision. I was going to be doing really well, but also doing something that I was not physically sick about every week.
Oh my God, I love that you say that. I mean, there's probably so many people nodding their heads. And it's funny when you're out of it, like when I left law too, and like now I look back and I think it's like insane to see the way that people work and like the just acceptance of zero boundaries and the way people are treated. And you look at it, it's like, it doesn't have to be like that. But when you're in it, you just think like, this is it. This is the way it is. And everybody, gripes and complains. And I love that you say like, nobody has to live like that. It's honestly the amount that even on this podcast, we've talked to people where it's like, they're having panic attacks and their body is breaking out in hives. And it's like your body is, basically screaming for you to stop this madness. And obviously a lot of times we don't see that way out. Here's the thing. It's so awesome that you had this on the side. So you obviously had something, but I still think there's so much to that identity of being like, a successful lawyer or whatever it is. And like people see you as a certain thing and you've spent so much time and money getting that degree. And it's one thing to even know what the next step is, but it's really still hard to break from that identity and say like, okay, I'm no longer going to be Shunta the lawyer. I'm now going to try to make this hairbow company a company. I'm wondering, like, did you get pushback from your family, from your colleagues or whatever, where it's like, wait, you're going to walk away from this career that you built for yourself?
The responses were mixed for sure. My mom was one of those who was like, are you sure you want to just do it halftime? And are you sure? You can do, and she went back to her, you can do anything. I know if anybody can do it, it's you, but are you sure? So hers was more of like are you sure? That was kind of her response. My husband was like, can you do law for maybe another year or two? Like, what are you thinking about that? And then my close friends who saw the change in me when I talked about Because of Zoe and work, and a lot of them are lawyers. My best friends are lawyers, and still to this day, they understood and they knew if anybody can do anything again, it's you. Like I think that's like the common thing from the people who really knew me. They're like, well, you would be the one who does that, and now you go and make some kind of bow empire or something. So this is going to be fun to watch. Let us know how we can support you. And then there were friends from like college. I remember I was in DC for work still while I was practicing law. Hadn't even told anyone I was leaving at the firm yet, but I was talking to him and he's a lawyer in DC. And I said, so I'm thinking about leaving the practice of law and starting and growing my hairbow company. And he was like, you're kidding, right? He's like, you're supposed to be our judge. You're supposed to be the judge. Like we were thinking about getting you on the bench. Like what are you talking about? So those were the reactions. They were either like, no, remember, you're like our great hope. Like you're supposed to be the judge. And then my friends who really saw like the real life in it with me, they got it. Even if they didn't fully get it, they got it enough to say, whatever you do, you're going to make it your own thing. So, and then for me, even when I actually made the decision and actually afterwards for, I would say probably at least a year, I would always introduce myself as saying, hi, I'm Shunta. I used to be a lawyer and now I do this thing, right? Because I had to make it clear that like, I really am smart, but now I do this other thing, right? I knew it was the right decision, but I didn't want to take away that, like you said, that's a part of who I am. And for so long, that was my story. People who knew me in high school and law school, of course, but in college, they knew, like, they used to, one of my friends used to call me legally black, like legally blonde. Like, I was just like the girl who was like, she is on a fire. She is on a path. This girl is going to do it. She's going to, like, we're going to get her on the bench or whatever it is you want to do. And it just changed. Like someone, who said the same thing all their life. And then when you hear them say they're going to change, and then it's like for a hair bow company, it's like, are you going through an early midlife crisis? For me, it was, and I didn't realize it until after the fact, looking back, that why did I keep needing to say that up front? Why did I need to keep making that a part of my story? Because it's not where I am today. I don't say, I'm Shunta and I used to live in Atlanta now. I wasn't, it was just, I had to do that because I felt like that was an important part of me, that even though it wasn't present anymore, I wanted you to know I have been there, or I could if I wanted to. But it's so funny because now, so I was actually talking to someone and she was like, you were a lawyer, weren't you? And I was like, oh, yeah, I was. So it's so different now. Like, I don't even talk about it. So people who met me, they don't even know, where it used to be very much so wrapped up in who I was, but it has changed drastically. I am very proud to say I do what I do. I'm a business owner, I'm an educator, but it was early on for at least a year. I always had to start with, here's what I used to do, here's who I was, to show. I guess I looked at that as part of what made me who I was. And it wasn't who I was anymore. I did struggle with that for at least a year. I remember, because I always felt the need to bring that up.
Yeah, I did the same exact thing. I mean, I would have my husband tell me, like, when we were at a dinner party, and I was like, someone would ask me what I would do, and I would go into this diatribe of like my whole history, and he was like, shh, like, nobody cares that you're a lawyer, And I was like, and it is, I had to feel like, I want you to know, but no, I am smart, and I did accomplish things, and I'm not just, and I'm still figuring it out. And I recently talked to another lawyer who has left, and she was asking me about like continuing education and, paying bar dues. And I was like, yeah, I did it for 2 years too, because I still wanted to hold on to, well, maybe I'm going to go back. And it's funny now, because then I like stopped and I'm like, this is so ridiculous.
Yeah, but I stopped all that.
Yeah, exactly. Because now you're okay with, I'm like, I know I'm never going back, but it does take a while to strip that identity. And that's okay. I think people need to know, like, you don't need to like burn every bridge and say like, come out like guns blazing. You can kind of take this slow approach. But one thing you didn't mention, and I was curious about, because like you were saying, all these people that knew you and everyone's like, you were our hope and you were going to be on the bench. And I think that there's an additional layer of like maybe guilt or pressure when you are a minority, when you're a woman. I think a lot of us are, we are holding this torch, or like we want to break the glass ceilings and we want to be in. And I think so many people I know still that are in law are miserable, but are staying because it's like this sort of like martyring themselves. Like, I have to pave the way for other women. I have to pave the way for other minorities. I felt a lot of that, especially because the work I was doing was public defense. And I felt like I need to be here for my clients, but I was so unhappy. And so did you struggle with that?
You know what? I didn't, but I'm going to tell you why. The reason I didn't struggle with that was because I really believed that what I was doing was going to show that greatness looks differently, and it doesn't have to look like the way the world has told us. I mean, think about it. When you're little, are you going to be a doctor or a lawyer, doctor or a lawyer, doctor or a lawyer? Now I can even see it better and more clearly. But the reason I think I didn't think about it that much then is because I knew whatever I really believed, again, back to my mom telling me, whatever I do, it's going to look it's going to be cool. I'm going to make sure that I am paving a way. It may have given me a little pause. Like, maybe I would have quit a little earlier if I wasn't thinking about the fact that I think about my daughter, but ultimately she was the reason why, which made it really easy for me to leave, because I thought about that. Like, you can look at it one way. I want my daughter to see that women who look like her can do things that the world looks at as being really important, like being a lawyer. Or I can show her that women who look like her, and just women in general, can do whatever they want and set the world on fire. And that can be something as simple as make hair bows and start a hair bow company. And that don't let someone else define what greatness or success looks like for you. And for me, that was the point. That was the picture. And that was even to show my friends who thought that, who no one was negative about it. And now all those people have since done so many posts of like, oh my goodness, look at my friend, look what she's doing over here, over there. But for me, I wanted women to know, and this still is what to this day, that we get to define what that looks like. We can take what someone might think is the most simplest thing and turn it into greatness and really have it make even more impact. I care about the work that I do right now more than I ever could working for a bank or working for, what I'm doing is I'm helping real women, either of my businesses, whether it's helping a mom celebrate the joy of childhood, giving that hair bow to a mom whose daughter was just diagnosed with cancer and she was so excited to get a headband for her, or whether it's helping another woman realize the skills she has, she can turn that into a business, or helping a team learn how to work more efficiently as a team so they can make more money and do less. Like the work I do now is like, this to me is what greatness looks like. And I want to challenge that, even the way I thought about, like I said, when I was introducing myself as this, because this is what showed the world I was smart. No, this actually, the thing I wasn't trained to do, because I was trained to be a lawyer to an extent, in law school, I was trained to do that thing. This thing I never took a class in, and I figured out day by day for myself and now help other women figure out. That to me is what the greatness is and the success looks like. And I get to show other women that we get to pave the way for whatever it is we want to do and make it look like how we want it to look like. What works for you may not look like what works for me, but if you're doing the thing that works for you and shining, I'm like, here, I'm clapping for you. So I just really had to see, and I really believed that whatever it is, and I still believe this to this day, whatever it is I'm doing on a day-to-day basis, I'm being an example of what greatness looks like. And I hold myself to that pressure and that standard gladly, because I think it shatters what we're always told, that you have to do X, Y, or Z. Like, this is how you prove you're smart, which just isn't the case.
Oh my God. I honestly, that's like a mic drop. I love that so much. I think that outlook is everything that we all need, because like you were just saying, I mean, when you're talking about it, you come alive. And there's that quote, like, we need more people to do what makes them come alive. And I think that you absolutely, and I was saying that because I think that it is a misplaced amount of pressure and thing. I don't think that you should stay in something because you have to pave a way, because you can pave a way. And we should all, I mean, the whole point of all of our, liberation, all the stuff is to be able to make your own choices and do the things that are right. And like you said, for every person that is different, every family has different needs. And we need to be okay with like people, there isn't one mold, there isn't one job, there isn't. And so we all need to figure out what our path looks like. And I think you are paving it beautifully and really setting such a high example for everybody. So I love that. So why don't you tell us, so you quit to do because of Zoe full time, and what happened after that? Like, what happened to the company? And I know you've started a second company. So kind of give us a little bit of a rundown of what the entrepreneurial journey looked like for you.
Yeah, I thought I was leaving the practice of law just to grow this hair bow company, and that was going to be it. And I was going to sing and, ride into the sunset doing that, and that would be fun. But this whole random story, which started from the random story of walking in on the wrong classroom meeting to starting making these random hair bows. After I left, I just started getting a lot of questions via email or DMs or comments. Actually, I don't think DMs were a thing then, but a lot of questions from people saying, hey, I think I saw you did this. How did you do that? And I found myself sending a lot of the same emails. I remember it was a lot of emails. And I said, okay, I'm going to get on Periscope and just talk about what I've learned in business or what I'm working on. And then I was like, okay, this keeps disappearing after 24 hours. I'm going to start a Facebook group so the videos are saved and stored. And I mean, we went from like 4 people, 14, 40. And then somehow other people got wind of like the things I was talking about. And I was asked to come and teach someone else's paid course students for a whole month. And I was like, okay, I don't think I'm qualified for that. But if you want me to talk about, she was like, no, can you talk about wholesale? You've done this, right? And I was like, yeah, I figured it all out. And I taught her group for a month on like how to like really think about wholesale and how we've done it and how it worked and how I did it from like literally like bootstrapping it. And it showed me like the things I know other people want to know. I just started kind of what I had and what I knew. And it has since then gone from really figuring out what parts of this do I like talking about? And what I realized what I really like talking about to other people is really how I'm able to do what I'm doing with the limited time that I have and how to create consistency and structure in your business. And that's when I created a framework a few years ago called the Peace, Pace, Progress Framework. And I turned that into a course. And that's like really my bread and butter. Like I love talking to people about like, really, let's be strategic before you try and go do these things. Let's talk about the things that actually like matter to build a foundation in your business. That's what I love talking about more so than other parts. And so I just kind of weaved out all the stuff I didn't like and added the stuff I did. And that has just grown and led me to being, asked to speak on different stages. And I just really love it. I started a podcast, and that kind of helped me hone in on what it was I wanted to do. And overall, it's helped women build business and life on the other side of busy, because I just hated that feeling of when I first left and was doing it full time. I had all the time in the world with one business, and I felt like I was always doing, because it was a new feeling of doing stuff you love all day. It was very consuming. I wanted to do it in the car on the way to family stuff. I wanted to do it at night. I wanted to do it on the weekends because it was always something to be done. I was single-handedly then making every single hair bow. I do not anymore, but I was doing every aspect, buying the fabric, cutting the fabric, ironing the fabric, like packaging. And it just became consuming. And I had to figure out how to make it not consuming, how to do less. And then when I figured that out, I realized this is actually when my business started making more and kind of teaching other people how to do that. And so that's kind of what I do now through speaking and teaching the framework. And that is something I really, really, really love, because I get to see it actually work for other people and see the difference between where they were when we first started and when they actually applied the framework. I really love that. And the cool thing for me, and I was just telling someone this today, is the things I love to do in the law firm were the few times I did get to go to court and the times I got to go into clients and actually work with them. And I do that all the time now, whether it's speaking on a stage, that's giving me my courtroom, may it please the court feeling. And then having retreats or having live events and going in and working with clients and helping them and their team. Like, I love those things. And those are the two, probably, like I said, the two parts that I really enjoyed from the firm. I'm getting to do that on a completely different audience, but in a way that I love so much. So it really does, for me, come all full circle. And it's really exciting to be able to have shaped and crafted something that I never, this wasn't on a vision board. This wasn't planned. Mostly everything, I had my life planned down to a T. None of it is where it was, but it's so much better because of, I took one step and then the next one unfolded. And I think that's what my message always is to people is you don't have to see what chapter 10 looks like, because the work you do in chapters 1 through 9 are going to change it anyway. So just focus on the next step. The next step is the only step to focus on, because if I hadn't left and done Because of Zoe, then I wouldn't have people ask me the questions, which led to this. Just take the next step, because it looks better than whatever you're picturing it to be. That's been also, like, it looks so much better. I love the work that I get to do now just as much as the Because of Zoe work that I do. I always tell people to take that step.
I love that. It's so it's such good advice. And I think it's so hard for people to understand. It comes up literally, I think, on every episode of this podcast. And honestly, the point of this podcast, the reason I started it was to show these stories, because I think so often we're trying to think our way into whatever life we want. And it just doesn't work that way. So I get constantly questions of like, but I don't know what I love to do, or I don't know what I want to do. And it's like, you're not going to think your way to it. Each thing will lead you to the next thing. And you'll see what parts of it you like, what parts of it you don't. My journey to law was very similar to yours. And I always loved mock trial. And I find myself now doing all that stuff through the podcast. And it's the same thing. I didn't even know what podcast was until like 2 years ago. And so it's just, until you start taking that action, how are you going to know? Because of Zoe is still your company as well. You guys are still running that, and you're doing piece-paced progress. And so how are you balancing now these two businesses? Is someone else running Because of Zoe? Or are you doing all of it?
So no one else is running it, but Because of Zoe, and this is also just a note for anyone who wants to start a second thing, I always say don't start your second thing until you can take your hands off of the first one and it still survives. So Because of Zoe is floating without much of my involvement. I probably spend 7% of my time throughout the whole year on Because of Zoe, if that. And this year, particularly because I had my son and he was home with me all year, still is. This year, it was just me and him, and I worked when he napped until July. July through the rest of the year, I have a nanny who comes 2 days a week, and like she's with him right now. I really couldn't do a ton, but the time I did have, I focused more so on the second business because that one needed more of me. Whereas Because of Zoe is in a good groove. I had an office assistant who did all of our shipping, putting our packages together, seamstresses across the country who are making the things, getting them into us. The office assistant opened the boxes, checks everything, does inventory, quality assurance, everything. The thing I come in and do is engage with our customers in our Facebook group, sign, welcome cards that we send out, pick the fabric. So like doing the things that I need to do don't take a ton of time. The way I set this year up was to really put Because of Zoe on autopilot, essentially. And then hopefully next year I'll be able to give it a little bit more attention now that my son is 1 and he'll have more care throughout the week. So I'll have more 3 work day. I'll move to a 3-day work week in 2020. But essentially it's when you have 2 businesses, I always say, do not try to grow 2 simultaneously. Let the first one literally can it be on autopilot and still make money and do well and pay the people who are doing the things. So that was the first thing, is to getting that to a place where it could do that. And the second was to really figure out what is my focus going to be, because I can't do everything even in this, because I have like the weekly podcast, I have a few one-on-one clients, and then there's my course students. So in 2020, the focus will be on Peace Pace Progress and really focusing in on that and giving lots of weight and time to that. So I think that key is, and this is what Peace Based Progress teaches you, is knowing what to actually focus on, because you cannot do all the things and do them well. I would rather take one pitcher and pour into one cup and have overflow than to try to put driplets in all these boxes and nothing is good. It's just a whole bunch of mediocre, and I'm allergic to mediocrity. I don't want anything related to me or associated with me to be mediocre. So I'd rather be really good about the thing I can focus on. Like if I'm not good at it, I usually don't talk about it. I just try to focus on the thing I can do and let everything else, and same thing in my business. I do what I can do and I hire out and outsource other stuff so that I have a team, which I didn't have this time last year. So this is all this year. And that was really put in place so that I could have that time with my son this year. And then, like I said, next year will look different. And I'm really excited because if we accomplish all we did in 2019 with very little work hours, I'm really excited what 2020 will look like. But it really is important to being able to focus on one singular goal and be okay with putting a lot of things on the back burner. We put wholesale on the back burner last year. And then when we came back to it, we realized I don't really want to keep that going. So we closed it up. And it wasn't until I was able to let it go for a little bit to realize we're great without it, and we are okay without it. And we may make a few exceptions, but we're not pitching constantly to stores and trying. That's no longer a goal for us for Because of Zoe, because we do so much better. We can do so much better with straight to our consumer. So, but it wasn't, if I was afraid to let that go in a season when I just couldn't do it. I was on maternity. I was going to take a real maternity leave. It wasn't going to be a fake laptop in bed with a baby type thing. If that's what you want, that's fine. That's not what I wanted. I needed to let some stuff go. And if I would have been afraid to do that, I wouldn't have been able to see that I actually really was not loving it so much anymore. I wasn't loving the constant pitching. And then some of the, I just wasn't loving it. So I wouldn't have known if I wouldn't have taken the time to be willing to let it go for a season.
There's just like so much good wisdom in there. And I think that it's just so impressive that you've not only are running 2 businesses, but then are doing it really on your own schedule, on your own time, and taking the time to have a maternity leave and be with a newborn. And I think we are taught this hustle culture. And so it's just so refreshing to see you can do it. You can do whatever you want to do and do it well and do it on your own schedule, as long as clearly you have your goals and you have it planned out. I think it doesn't seem realistic to a lot of us, and it's really great that you're modeling that and showing people that it really is possible. So do you have any advice for somebody that's maybe where you were, as a lawyer, and they don't really know, where the next step is, but they want to get out and they're trying to figure out what that thing is, but they don't know how to figure that out?
I always start with life first. That's actually one of my company's core values: life first, business second. What kind of life do you want to live? For me, thinking about that helped me make my decision. I looked at the life of people who were where I was working toward, and I didn't see anybody's life who I wanted to pick up, emulate. That's where you're headed. And I thought about what do I wanted life to look like if I wanted to, this week when I'm on field trip with my daughter, I don't have to feel bad about going in and asking for that or thinking about what I'm going to make up or have my phone out checking my emails while I'm on the field trip. I wanted a life that felt peaceful. I just wanted a life that, peace, and that's why it's probably the first word in Peace Based Progress. But I just wanted a life of peace and ease, in a sense, where I work very hard, but I keep what's first. So I always say, just what do you want your life to look like? And what type of work environment or setting or schedule worked for that? Because I think a lot of times we think about what we want to do in our lives, and then we try to jam life in the little holes that are left. That's backwards. And that's why you're stressed and burnt out and overwhelmed. Plan what matters first. Life. This is what I want life to look like. What kind of business, what kind of work would allow me to live this kind of life? Whether that is what kind of life would give me the summers off? Do you need to be a teacher? Do you want a life where you only work in the mornings? What kind of job is that where you could just work mornings? Or you just want, like, figure that out. But the world is literally your oyster. I don't really know what that means because I don't eat oysters, but the world is your shoe closet. I really love shoes, right? You get to pick. And what a time to be alive. If you have a phone or a computer, you can be anything. You can do anything. So first, think about what you want your life to look like and what type of schedule work would allow you to do that. What are the things that you're naturally good at that you take for granted? I was the person my friends go to for order and structure. And can you come help me clean out my office and set up these systems? That's essentially what I do for business owners and teams. I come into their company and help their teams. Like, this was stuff I was doing for my friends, like helping them get organized. I always think big picture first and map out a budget or map out a plan or a flow chart. What are the things that you do naturally that you're taking for granted that you're really good at? Because that may be able to be translated in a way. My hairstylist in Atlanta, she's really good at hair, and her and another woman started a company teaching other women how to care for naturally curly hair. And they've started a podcast and like all these things, and it's created a completely different thing. And she now spends more time doing that than she is behind the chair. It's the things you're good at that you take for granted. What can you do with that? And it may not be entrepreneurship. It may be helping someone else in their business, but it's still in a way that works for your schedule. Can you find someone you respect and who respects you, who has a growing company that you can come in and you're really good with whatever, keeping a calendar or a schedule? I can tell you that is a skill that is lacking out here. Yeah. And someone who has attention to detail, like if that's you, call me. It's just like there are people right now who need the skill you have. You just have to do a little bit of time and think about what that looks like. And don't try to decide what that looks like based off what you see other people doing, because maybe you're going to end up picking up something that wasn't for you. Because if I would have done that, I could have said, okay, I'm going to go in-house. That's what everyone does when they're mad at the firm. And I tried that. I interviewed with that and I was like, this sounds so boring. So what was right there that made sense and didn't make sense, right? And had I not done that, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I think outside the box. Don't just pick something that is like the 1, 2, 3 check box in front of you. Really do some soul searching about what you really enjoy doing. Because the thing is, I get excited about the work I do every day, even on the hard, sucky days. It's still, I can go and look at our purpose and the vision I have for both businesses, and that can push through the hard days. And you need that.
Absolutely. Oh my God, that was so good. Thank you so much, Shunta. This has been just incredible. Can you let everyone know where they can come and find you, follow you, get more of all this good stuff that you're giving?
Absolutely. I'm on Instagram on Insta stories every single day. I love Insta stories, and I'm at Shunta Grant. My name is spelled a little unique. It's SHUNTAGRANT. That's the first place to kind of really get to know, like, who is this girl, by coming over on Instagram. I also have a free Facebook group. It's called Circle of Success, and you can sign up to join us there at shuntagrant.com/circle. Those are probably the two best places to get started. And then if you're interested more about Peace-Based Progress, I have a roadmap teaching you the 4 steps to consistent progress in your business. And you can find that at shuntagrant.com/roadmap.
Wonderful. I will link to all of those in the show notes in case people can't write it down right now. Shunta, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thank you.
How amazing is Shunta? Honestly, I could talk to her forever. And here are my 3 takeaways. But honestly, I could just have one because I feel like this is gold. Life first, business second. It really just comes down to that. I think that we get so caught up in what we should be doing and achieving all these things that don't make us happy. And it comes down to, like, what do you want your life to look like? Figure that out. Sit down and have a real hard look at, like, what is important to you? What do you want more of in your life? And prioritize that. And then the business and career should come second. 2, the next step is the only one to focus on. We make things so complicated. We overwhelm ourselves before we even start. You don't have to get from A to Z. You just got to go from A to B. And lastly, you can model greatness in whatever you do. we're so tied to this like cookie cutter image of ourselves and what we're successful at. And we think that if we leave that, then I don't know, we're giving up that success. But you can model greatness in whatever your next step is. I hope you liked this episode. If you did, go give Shunta some love too on Instagram. I have all of her links in the show notes, and I will see you on the next episode. Thank you so much for listening. I can't tell you how much it means to me. If you liked the podcast, please rate and review us on iTunes. It'll help other people find the show. If you want to connect or reach out, follow along on Instagram and Facebook at Lessons from a Quitter and on Twitter at Quitter Podcast. I would love to hear from you guys, and I'll see you on the next episode.